Namaste, all of you. Today we are very, very lucky to interview Ruth from New Zealand. It's very, very special because for my father, New Zealand was always a very, very special place because that's how he came to yoga. So we are very, very happy that we are interviewing a New Zealander today in our Viniyoga Women series. So I'm very glad to welcome you, Ruth. How are you feeling today?
I've had a pretty rough day, but I'm glad to be here with you.
I'm so sorry that you had a rough day, but I hope the ending of the day at least is not as rough as it began. So anyway, friends, this is Ruth Diggins. We are interviewing today. And she is a Viniyoga teacher, trainer, and Viniyoga therapist in New Zealand, based a little bit outside of Wellington in a place called Raumati South. It's a very beautiful beach there. And she is a long-term student of our tradition, and we are very, very fortunate to have her in New Zealand, spreading the wonderful teachings of Viniyoga. And we know each other for quite a long time when our children were still very, very small. So it's a long relationship that we have had, so nice. And now all our children are almost at least taller than me, all of them. I don't know about you, but they're all taller than me at least, which is not difficult.
19 years it is.
Yes, that's amazing. So we are quite happy to have this interview. We changed the time, my dear friends, to the morning time. This is because it is more convenient for Ruth at this time, because New Zealand is so far away on the other side of the planet that we have to use this time. So sorry about it if there is any discomfort for all of you to wake up either too early to watch or maybe stay very late if you are watching from North America or something like that. But we are appreciating very much your presence here. So thank you all. And Ruth has decided that she will begin our conversation today first with a very nice chanting. So over to you, Ruth. Namaste.
Namaste. So this is the first chant that I ever learnt in this lineage, and I learnt this chant from Anna Sandel in Wellington.
North America or something like that, but we are appreciating. Please.
Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavati Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Ruth, for this wonderful chanting. And my dear friends, this chant is one of the Shanti Patha we call, which is often chanted at the beginning of every education, so that both the teacher and the student may be protected. And it's so nice to do that now, so that we are protected during this interview. So in case there are any kind of challenges which we have. Huh?
Technology challenges, huh?
Yes, that's exactly what I was thinking, because every time I'm trying to do something which involves digital technology with Ruth, usually there are some kind of divine interferences that crash the system, So let's see what happens this time. So Ruth, jokes apart, so glad that you are part of this conversation. And can you tell us a little bit about how you were drawn to this tradition and what has sustained you for so many years to be part of this tradition? So just to give everybody a little historical perspective.
Sure. So I first began yoga when I was probably about 4. My mum had yoga books. We didn't have a TV, but my mum had yoga books, and she used to disappear into her bedroom and practice yoga. And anyone that's had children knows that we can't bear that. So I used to follow her in and copy her, much to her amazement, because, you know, children's bodies can do all of those postures. So that was my first introduction to yoga. And then I did a lot of dancing when I was younger, and that really helped me. And then when I went to university, I studied agricultural science at Massey University, and I used to go to meditation then, and I started going to yoga classes then. I think it probably was in the Iyengar tradition. But then I worked on farms, and you think that New Zealand is the back of beyond, but there's farms in New Zealand that are even further away than that. There was no hope of a yoga class. So eventually I started working in the city, and I worked for the Ministry of Agriculture, and I worked in the border service. So now there's even TV programs about that. And I, through the work on the farm and through work like throwing alpacas around and lots of animals like that, I really hurt my back. So one day I got out of the car and I couldn't straighten up. I was stuck in the rice planting position. And the only thing that Western medicine could offer me was titanium rods in my back. And I don't really want to go there. So luckily I had a really good osteopath, and she helped me through those episodes. And she told me later that she didn't think that I'd make it. But anyway, she helped me through with some yoga exercises. And then I looked around for a yoga school in Wellington, and I found a yoga school run by Peter Henneveld, which was an Iyengar school. And I went there for about a year, and I met Linda Myers Henneveld there at that stage. And I was 28 then, and I'm almost 56 now. So if you can do the maths. I can't do maths.
Me too. I'm not so good in mathematics, you know that.
So that's 25, 26, 27, 28 years ago. So Linda's probably watching this. So that's when I met Linda. And I didn't find that Iyengar yoga actually worked for me. So I kept looking for a different kind of yoga. And that's when I met Anna Sandel, and she'd been to the Mandaram in Chennai and met your father. And the combination of the breath and the movement, I was in heaven. I just felt like this is what I've been looking for. And then the doctor, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. You know, the guy that lives down in Dunedin?
Craig Wilson.
Yes. He came to give a talk about the Yoga Sutras. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. So of the body, the breath, the little bit of chanting that we did, and the philosophy, I just knew I was in the right place. So I did yoga with Anna right through my pregnancies. So I've got 2 boys who are now 22 and 20. And then my husband Alistair needed to do his child psychiatry training, and you couldn't do that in New Zealand at that time. So we went to Melbourne, And Anna put me on to Barbara Bryan, who has a yoga school in Melbourne and was very closely connected with you guys. So I started my yoga teacher training like the first week that we arrived in Melbourne. There was a new course starting. And then a month later, I met you. And you didn't even put me off, even with all your terrible jokes.
I know I'm a bad joker.
And I also met my mate Sasha Kronfeld, and she was there to do some chanting. And the combination of and the depth of the teachings, I just knew I was in the right place. You were doing a yoga therapy type kind of thing, and at the time I was really struggling because my younger son had just started having epilepsy and I wasn't sleeping, and I'm pretty sensitive anyway, but my psychic sensitivities had just gone through the roof, so that I couldn't even go to the supermarket without getting too much information. And you asked me about that, and I told you about that in front of everybody, much to their surprise, and you gave me a practice and it helped. And maybe it was maybe it was when I came back to New Zealand and then the whole family visited Melbourne. I can't remember the order of things. I didn't sleep much at that time. But when I met you, and later on when I met your father, you just really welcomed me in like a member of the family, partly I think because I was from New Zealand, but yeah, it was just really welcoming. And so then you decided that you would like to invite me to Sangha and to come to India. And I kept saying that my boys were too young. And even after we came back to New Zealand, you would keep ringing me and going, right, so you're ready to come to Sangha? And I really admire that perseverance. And I started coming to India once a year and then twice a year for a month to study.
The good old days. And then you got stuck, not in the rice field position, but you got stuck with me. Sorry about it.
It's been an honor, and your jokes have got better.
Yeah, I heard so. Our dear friend Victoria you gave me that certificate as well, that my jokes have gotten better. Anyway, so Ruth, what is it that is so unique about this Viniyoga tradition that kept you in? Like, what are the factors that you think is so unique to this tradition that is keeping you there? Because as you said, in the earlier part of your life, you have tried different kinds of yoga, but this is one thing that you've stuck with for so many years. So what is it?
Well, part of it, I think, is because I'm very fiery, pitta disposition. I have a bit of oppositional defiance disorder, and I don't like being told that something is one way. And that's what I love about yoga, is that it's an anushasanam, and the theories are presented as signposts towards something, not the something itself. And so that gave me the complete freedom to have my experiences validated as mine, and that's incredibly important to me. The other things are the breadth of the teachings. I love the Yoga Sutras, the philosophy, and even though the philosophy is pretty ancient, it's completely applicable to every human being that I work with. It's applicable to me, and it's a really solid framework that supports me in my life and supports me with helping people. So And the tools just work, you know, that's amazing. There's so many tools that you can have in your kete or your basket of knowledge that you can choose the tool that the person needs to help them on their journey to find happiness. It's awesome. And I think ever since I was a little girl, people have talked to me. When I was at high school, I used to do remedial reading for students that were having trouble with reading. And it got to the stage when I had a little office along from the staff room. And the staff would come and visit me and tell me all sorts of things, which was excellent because I could never enter school because I knew too many things about the teachers. But all my life, people have felt the need to talk to me or felt comfortable with talking to me. And being a yoga therapist means that I have tools to offer people that can help them come out of suffering. And it's not like doing a massage. I don't have to do the work. I just provide the tools. They access their power and they heal. It's amazing.
That is true that everybody likes to talk to you because you're a very good listener. So that's another wonderful skill you have. And yes, you're not just a little bit pitta disposed. I think we have to make a clarification there. You're very pitta disposed.
And I've got a bit of kapha too. Thank you very much.
That too, that too. So Ruth, you talked about the breadth of the Viniyoga's teaching or ideas and tools, etc. Among all these things, which one is your favorite? Like if you have to choose one of it, what would be that?
Only one?
Yeah, just one.
That's mean.
That's what?
That's mean. I want to choose more than one.
You know, I am sometimes mean, but I have this. I'm asking you one because it's a lead into another question. So please, if you can be kind enough to choose one, it'll help.
Okay, so if I'm only allowed to choose one, it would be the Yoga Sutras.
I was kind of expecting that answer because I know you very well. Now, among the Yoga Sutras, tell me what is your favorite sutra? Again, one, and why it is your favorite. I told you I'm going to ask you unexpected questions, so there you go.
Can I have two?
Sure, you're allowed to.
So my two favorite ones would be Atta Yoga Anushasanam and Shraddha Viryam. And I can't remember the rest of it because you're looking at me.
It's your favorite and you can't remember it. That's awesome. So, Shraddha, Virya, Smriti, Samadhi, Prajna, Purvaka, Itaresham. So, why are these two your favorites? Can you share some light to our wonderful friends who are watching? Because these are very nice sutras.
So, the first Yoga Sutras, because you could spend like a whole weekend talking about that one line. Yeah, it's got such amazing depth in it. But just quickly, the word atta, you know, that they chose that word specifically, and so that it's open to everybody. Whatever other beliefs you have that can go along with that, and also that it means being here now. So for me, that's been a really important part of the yoga teachings, about learning to actually be here with every breath that I take, coming home. And for me, the yoga journey is a lot about coming home and helping other people find ways to come home. And that it's an anushasanam, that you have to do it. That it's not just a headology, even though I love the Yoga Sutras, it's actually that you have to practice. But that the practice is so open. It does, you know, when we talk about abhyasa, it's not just winging your body around into pretzel shapes. It's really open. So how's that?
That's very good. And what about the second sutra that you said is your favorite?
So I can really clearly hear still your father's voice in my head, how he used to talk about Shraddha and how everybody has Shraddha. Some, maybe it's just a minute seed, but that everybody has that. And that it's, you know, one of the first tools of yoga that's talked about, you know, and that through even a tiny modicum of faith, that you will have the energy to take those steps that you need to take, and that will help you to have a look at what you need to have a look at, to let go of what you need to have a look at, and that it's you know, that smriti has our memories are important. Our ability to remember helps us to keep taking those steps even when we're having a hard day. I mean, again, you could talk about that for a whole weekend. It's amazing.
It is amazing. That is the beauty of the Yoga Sutra, and that's the beauty of our tradition as well, because we've been so fortunate to be taught by such great masters who have so much knowledge about each and every word in the sutra, not just a casual interpretation of the sutras.
And like, for example, like today. So today I spent a lot of the day with a very dear friend whose husband suddenly died last night. And that shraddha, that feeling that word gives me, that sustains me, that helps to hold me, there's just not words for it, you know, just that I can go and be with her and hold her and know that, you know, that it will be all right.
So sorry about your friend's loss, and so glad that you were there to help her. This is wonderful, and even more happy that after helping her, you are here to do this conversation. That's Ruth.
Well, but that's because I feel held by my practice. I feel held by the framework of yoga, the philosophical understanding, that I feel held by my relationship with you, that I feel seen by you, that, you know, that together we can look at my shit, for want of a better word, and that's okay.
It is definitely okay to look at our shit, for want of a better word. I'm using your word. So Ruth, I have another question, which is again something that I've asked the other ladies as well, because conventionally, most of the yoga teachers have always been men. And we are so privileged in the Viniyoga tradition that we have so many women teachers, women students. And I'm wondering, what is your feeling about being a woman, first and foremost, as a yoga teacher? I mean, from the woman's point of view, I would not be able to understand because I'm a man. So what is your perspective about this as being a woman and being a yoga teacher, a trainer, etc.? I'm very curious about it.
I do find these questions quite difficult. You might have to help me get started, but so part of the reason I find it difficult is because I feel that we're all spirits leading a human existence. So in one way, I don't see us as gendered. In another way, I have experienced this world as a woman. So yeah, so I do get it. Yes, it's a really tricky question to answer. Like, so from my perspective, being a yoga teacher and a yoga trainer in this tradition just feels perfectly right. And I feel supported by you in what I do, supported by myself. Most of my students are women. And partly I think that is because that's who I want to teach. Because I don't really know what it's like to be a man. And it is different when you teach, if you're working with someone with pelvic floor issues and you're a woman, in some ways you understand that in a way that I can't understand a man's pelvic floor. But in other ways, we are all spirits leading a human existence, aren't we? So, but what do you mean? Ask me another question, because I feel like I'm missing it.
Well, you are going in the right direction, because conventionally we have always had masculine teachers. Patanjali was male. Swatmarama was male. My grandfather was male. My father is male. I am male. And in other traditions as well, there's many, many men who have been teachers of yoga. So, and it is very true that my grandfather made the shift to start teaching women early in the 1900s, so that women could access yoga. And today, women dominate the field of yoga. Like you have just said, most of your students are women, but it's not just your students, it's also my students, most of whom are women. And sometimes I don't feel that I'm even qualified to teach, especially like in the example you gave, because certain things are very peculiar to the man's body and very unique to a woman's body. And that's one thing. But on the other hand, as you said, we are all spirits. So my question, more pointed, is like, do you feel any way out of place being in the as a yoga teacher, as a woman, or do you feel that you actually have certain set of skills as a woman that actually aids you to be a better yoga teacher? Because that's what I feel, that many women can be much more uh, better teachers in the field of not just yoga, but in many spiritual domains, because of those predisposed feminine qualities like intuition and empathy and nourishment and care, which comes much more spontaneously to women than for men, who have to learn it.
Yeah.
And even if they learn it, they have to allow it. For example, men cannot cry. This is what is taught to many people. But for women, many of these qualities comes much more spontaneously. What's your experience?
So I guess my experience is, of course, very personal, and I've had psychic experiences since I was really little. Yeah. And I was always looking for some kind of something where I could be all of me. And so for me, being a yoga teacher is or not even being a yoga teacher, it's like I'm being me and I'm sharing these yoga tools. Yep. And I feel like yoga gives me, and you have too, have given me complete permission to be exactly who I am. When they used to call me at university the social worker in gumboots. So, but I never found a tool that meant that I didn't have to do the work. Like I did massage for a while, and people loved it. Of course they loved it, because I was pouring lots of energy into them. But this tradition means that I can just share the tools and people can do the work. So, but I guess that's a spirit thing. I've always been a pretty headstrong woman, you know that.
Yeah, but I don't want you to say, I have always been. You are, full stop. It's now as well. And I think that's exactly what I was wanting you to share, because the one profound thing that you said, I think, which I think all women should hear, is what you just said a few seconds ago, where you said, you suddenly felt that you can be all of you. And I think that is the most important thing, because when I talk with a lot of women, and I know you are also talking to a lot of women, many of them don't even give permission to be themselves, all of themselves. And I think that is the most important thing. And I'm very glad that you shared that.
And the other thing that I would share on that is because I am bisexual. And so I lived with a woman for 7 years when I was younger. And I think that whole process is a lot about learning about yourself. And I think one of the worst things you can be is bisexual. It was pretty, coming out as lesbian was fine. Coming out as bisexual was awful.
I can
And
only imagine.
being and being married to a man is really bad. So I think I've been on this journey of figuring out who I am and how to be all of that, for a while. I haven't needed permission from someone else, but there are a lot of, it's not like I was waiting for your permission to be me, but I was brought up in certain kinds of ways where certain kind of things are allowed. And I was brought up Catholic, so being a lesbian girl wasn't exactly acceptable thing. So being unacceptable has been quite a big part of my life, which I've actually quite enjoyed. And being bisexual and being psychic and knowing stuff that I'm not supposed to know, it's part of the journey, isn't it?
Yes, and I think that is the most wonderful thing about being a woman as well, because women can do all these kind of things and manage much better than men can. I think men would go nuts if they had the same kind of experiences that you have. One thing I do want to comment about is you said being married to a man is terrible, but you are very lucky that you have a very good man, Alistair, my dear friend. So don't complain. Don't complain. You
No,
are.
I didn't
It
mean
could have been worse.
that being married to him was terrible, but it doesn't fit into a very nice box if you're bisexual, married to a man, and have boys. It's
I know. That's what is very interesting for me, because you are kind of like the lonely woman in your household, because you are surrounded by all boys, not just husband and two boy children, but also your two dogs are male.
that's why I got 2 chickens. They're 2 female chickens.
So good. That's a balance of energy. Now, coming to this topic, Ruth, because this is also an important topic about the women issue, which is that there's a lot more pressure on the woman from society to fit a certain standard, to fit a certain way. Like, for example, the most common problem is the body image. And this is also combined, especially with yoga, where many people think that yoga teachers should be like skinny and flexible, blah, blah, blah. And that is even more projected on women yoga teachers or women. And I was just reading a statistics this morning that in the US, 65% of girls less than 14 don't like their body. And when that age is increased till 17, that statistic goes to 80%. They're not happy with their body. So, what is your experience and your views about this? Because you are one of the best persons to answer this question.
Yes, because I'm not a stick insect.
Exactly.
Yes, I like my chubba. Yeah, I don't think it's just women either. I think men face a lot of pressure about looking a certain way.
Now
But yes,
more and more. Now more
yeah.
and more.
Well, my husband, being a child psychiatrist, he sees boys with anorexia as well as girls. So it's not limited. But yes, I do agree that women face an awful lot of images every day. You know, there's statistics about how many images that we see that say that we need to be, you know, this big around, and all the emphasis on the external about what you look like being so important. And I'm not skinny, and I love my body. And I think the most important things for me about my body are that it supports me in what I want to do. And I see a lot of the control issues about women being looking a certain kind of way as an external framework to control women. And we've had all sorts of control on us as women for many, many generations now, haven't we? But I don't believe that it was always like that. And I think that the feminine is sacred. I think the earth is sacred. And I think one of the ways that we can do the things that we do to the earth when we also go along with treating women a certain kind of way. And so I see it as a control mechanism. It's an external control mechanism, and then we internalize it. And then as women, we have to fight. You know, it reminds me of the Bhagavad Gita. We have to fight to connect with our heart, to connect with our spirit, and make the internal more important than the external. But it is a fight. You know, those messages that we get every single day affect all women. You know, they affect me, and I feel really supported in my practice to be an internally connected person. But I still have those voices that tell me I'm too fat. But I fight them, and I don't believe them. Because I really know through yoga that I can have 57 thoughts before my morning coffee, and none of my thoughts are who I am. But it's a battle, and I see it in most of the women that I work with. And I think it's really important that I'm not a stick insect, that I'm not really skinny. You know that, and I'm lucky that it's not my constitution to be skinny. You know, but I feel very strongly about that I stand up the front in my body and connected to my spirit.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. In this topic, you were talking to me a little earlier about something very profound about the subject and the object. Can you share that with our friends?
So one of the models in yoga that I'm really interested in is the whole Dvandava model, you know, the polarities. And one of the big polarities that I work with in women that come to see me is that subject-object polarity. So we are trained, you know, and I have been trained up to be an object of desire. So I'm trained up to want people to want me. You know, in my particular case, it can be men and women, so I can want everybody to want me, but women are trained to be wanted. They're not trained to be the subject of their own lives and figure out what they want. And so I see those two as the polarities, the being the object of desire, the wanting to be wanted and not knowing what you want, and the other extreme being the subject of your own life. And that yoga is all about finding your path, you know, what you want to do, what the whole of you wants to do, not just what your head wants to do, not what the clashes want you to do, but to connect with who you really are and find out what you want to do. So
That's very, very profound. I think that's a very good reflection for people to have, to move from being an object to being the subject. This is very, very important. And I think, Ruth, it's not just you. I mean, all over the world, this is a problem. It's not just you or one country or one specific place. It's a whole range of countries that is having this kind of a problem. Even in India and everywhere, there is this problem that women are perceived as not just objects of desire, but also objects that can be possessed. Because usually it's either the father owns the girl child, and then after marriage, it's the husband who owns the woman, the wife. This has been history in many places. And I think that's why the woman become the object of possession. And even they are sometimes possessed by the children. It's like trapped. And that's where the movement has to come psychically, that the woman herself moves away from that place to be the object, to the subject. This is very, very profound. And I'm very, very happy that you shared this, because this is an important shift in consciousness. It's a shift in consciousness to move from being an external object to being an internal object, internal subject, actually.
yeah.
It's very, very important.
Yeah.
Go on, you wanted to say something?
In some cultures where, you move from being owned by your dad to being owned by your husband, it's more gross, from the gross to subtle. It can be harder for Western women to see that they're still stuck in the same bind. It's a bit more subtle, but the same thing is happening. And it's that this Kali Yuga, we're in the stage of the world, our so-called civilization, the way that we treat the earth and the way that we treat women, I see as integrally linked. And we need to change the way that we treat the earth and the way that we treat women.
And here I want to ask you, do you still feel that that's the case in New Zealand? I thought New Zealand is a little bit better than other countries. You have a very, very dynamic woman leader, and you guys are treating the earth much better than the rest of the world. So you are a little bit ahead probably of others.
In some ways, but we're not, by no means have we got it sorted. By no means, even though, they've just scrapped the last oil exploration permit that they gave. They actually scrapped it, but when we're by no means perfect. We have plastic. We don't recycle it. We drive cars. It's.
I understand.
We're just lucky because we have a smaller population. It's very easy to look green when you've got a smaller population and lots of parks.
That's true. That's true. That's true. One more question I have, because this is also quite important. This is coming from me personally, knowing you very well as well, because even when you are teaching your students, you're not just functioning like an instructor. I know that you are not only giving them lots of energy psychically, but also you're very often absorbing a lot of their negativity and energy, and this affects you. And I also know that this is the case with a lot of teachers who are also having this problem. So how do you regenerate yourself? Because this can tire you, this can exhaust you, and I know it does. How do you regenerate yourself, and what will be your advice to other people who have this kind of similar experience?
So, first of all, my practice is very important to me, and my relationship with you, the ongoing relationship with you, and the support. And there's techniques, so I do pranayama between seeing people. I clean the room out with chanting. I will, if it's especially heavy, then I might put some chanting on of you or your dad and leave it in the room for a couple of hours with all the doors open and things like that. So I look after the space that I teach in. Mostly I see people at home, but there's some people I don't see at home. I see them in a different space. So I've got more careful about that. And then there's other things I do. So on top of my practice, there's being in nature is really important to me. And luckily, I live by a beach. And luckily, I've got 2 dogs. So I walk for at least an hour every day down through the bush and round by the beach. And if it's an especially heavy day, I'll go for a bike ride as well. And I go in the garden like your mum. And it's, you know, growing real things. Like I've got a really good potato crop this year. Not such good tomatoes, but, and I got this really huge marrow the other day, and that makes me so happy. So I think for me, yoga is a way to support my life. It's not actually my life. So to do things that I really love, which is, you know, health on the beach and out in the bush and in my garden and yeah, stuff like that. So for me, it's really important for me to remember that yoga isn't my life. I've got a life that's supported by yoga, and I have this work, which is the easiest it's ever been because I've got yoga.
That's excellent. That's excellent. That's why the rishis in the past used to live near nature as well.
Yeah, I couldn't do it if I lived in a city, but. And the other thing that's really important to me is having a partner that really gets my road in life. You know, he's got his own path and his own spiritual path, and even though he still does his practice that he got from you, but he has his own spiritual path, and his job is his vocation, you know, being a child psychiatrist and is his vocation. So he's a really important support. My girlfriends are a really important support. My children, now that they're not children anymore, because they really support what we do. And Wiramunenia, our kaumātua, is a really important support for me too.
Yes, we are very lucky to have him as well. Yeah.
And my students too, you know, because I get so excited by things, and they're really interested in talking to people about something that you're really excited about, who are just as crazily excited about it. That's pretty damn cool. And we've built quite a good community here, with you coming before COVID, coming at least every year, and we've built a great community here.
Yes, we have lots of positively crazy people in our Sangha.
Yeah.
Not negatively crazy. We are very lucky. We are very lucky. Ruth, I have one last question. You know, you are pretty extraordinary in the sense that you somehow came out not just as a lesbian, but also as bisexual, which is already very hard. But also you are not afraid to talk about your psychic experiences, which these 2 topics are very, very, I would say, challenging for most of the population today. Like 99.9% of the population would struggle with one of the issues, not both of the issues. Now, that's what makes you extraordinary, because you have had these 2 things and you're really not afraid of these 2 things. But there are a lot of people who are afraid and probably are still hiding. What would you tell them, what would you want them to hear so that they come out of this fear and they are able to embrace, like you said, all of themselves?
I think the really important thing is to find your path. I don't think it has to be yoga, just the eka tattva, that there's to find your path and to stick with it. And then that's what gives you the strength to be all that you are when you find your right path. Because then that helps hold you, whatever that path is, whether it's, I don't know, qigong or mixed martial arts or surfing or whatever it is. Yeah, because you can't, if you feel fear, you feel fear. You can't just shove it down and not feel it, but to have something else, that's some light that's going to lead you home.
That's what my father always used to say. If you fill your cup with fear, you will end up with fear. You fill your cup with Shraddha, you will have Shraddha and you can move forward, because fear is going to debilitate you from moving forward.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So that's great. That's great. Do you want to say anything to anybody, anything that comes to your heart at all?
Well, it doesn't go without saying, but I am eternally grateful to you and your father for sharing these most amazing jewels that you have and that you continue to share so generously. You have a special place in my heart and with my family. My boys know Kausthub really well, and so does my husband. You are part of our family, and so is your mother. We've had Minika come to stay, and she's taught Alistair how to make chapatis, and he is the best chapati maker. It means so much to me, not just on a metaphysical level, but just on that practical. Every day we make chapatis and we think about Minika and you guys. It's amazing. And that, to be with you when your dad was passing.
Yes, I was going to say that, because not I know you are grateful to me and my family, but we are also very grateful to you, because you were during the most difficult time in my life twice, not just once, but in twice, and that's why I'm very, very grateful. And I think, like you just said, you were one of the three people who were with me on the night my father passed. You, Philip, and Evelyn were with me on the night he passed, and that always means something to me. It's very, very deeply rooted in my heart. So we also, that we are just family. We are not just, something else. So it's very, very deep. So I'm also grateful to you for that, and also to Alistair for all the great things he does. He's not just an advisor to our school, but he's also doing so many nice things personally to support our work, not just in New Zealand, but also he's supporting me personally a lot in so many ways to become a better and better person.
Yeah.
And we do have a very fascinating relationship with your kids as well, who sorted us all out very, very early. They figured out who the hell we are, and they kind of really know each everything.
And I really like the relationship I have with you. That, I mean, you know what I'm like. I'm very honest, and so are you. And to have had the privilege to be there for you when your shit hit the fan, and the times that you've been there for me when my shit's hit the fan. I mean, and that's really important to me, that you're not some robe wearing perfected being on some pedestal, because I couldn't have stood that. You're a real person going through a real life, and I love sharing this journey with you.
Well, I don't know any other way, because that's what I've been observing with my own father as well, that he's not a perfect being. He's not just posing to be somebody perfect with, like you said, some orange robes and some japamalas and being like, I'm a guru and things like that. My father never called himself a guru, you know,
Yeah.
nor did he allow anybody to call him a guru. You know, he was just Desikachar, that was his name. And we are very lucky to be guided by such people. And that's why, and what you said is very, very important, which I appreciate very much. I think the reason why you and me are very close is because we are very honest with each other, and
Yeah.
we don't know any other way. And this is one message that I always remind people, that people, if want to be in the spiritual field, whether it's yoga or some other form of spirituality, honesty is the only way. And that's what you and I share. That's what we share with Viramo. That's what I share with Alistair. We are very, very honest and open. And I think this is very, very important. Very important.
And I've always been disappointed that you're not a woman, because I always wanted a woman yoga teacher, but you've made up for that by not being perfect.
Sorry to let you down that I'm not a woman. But sometimes I also wonder whether my life would have been a little bit more easier if I was a woman. I struggle sometimes with this, that I'm a man. I struggle with this as well. This is true.
Yeah.
Anyway, we come to the close of this interview. Ruth, thank you for being here with us. And thank you all, my dear friends who are watching with us, and those who will watch this later, because I'm sure that some of you will not be live at this moment. So we will see you later. You will see it later.
Awake, you mean awake.
Awake. Thank you. Because it's quite early in Europe and probably very late in Australia, in America and South America, etc. So there will be some people who will watch it later. So thank you all for showing up, my dear friends. We really appreciate your support in being part of these conversations. And thank you so much, Ruth, not just for being here today, but also for everything that you have done, you are doing, and you will do. And I really thank the gods for not giving us any technological problems during our technological encounter, because I think this is the first time we didn't have a problem. Even recently, we did the New Zealand therapy training with online classes. We had some issues.
But Wiramu and Leslie helped me out with that, because I told them what we were going to try and do. And so I think we've had a little bit of help from this end.
Thanks to Virgo and Leslie. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, and have a nice evening. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you all for joining us.